What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to episode number 583 of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk Hot Tags of the Week. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango, flying solo for this edition. Honestly, got to admit, morning ahead of time, low energy day. I don't really necessarily want to cram this in right now, right before SmackDown, but I wanted to make sure that I didn't not give you guys an episode of the Hot Tags, and now's pretty much the only time I could do it. Not in the best of spirits at the moment, so forgive me for a downer kind of an episode when it comes to that. We'll see what's going on in the future, but if you know, you know. Point being, there are still some things to talk about, some interesting things, some important things to run down, and we do have the NXT Vengeance Day pay-per-view point post-show coming up tomorrow night, so kind of now or never, needed to get through the hot tags. So I still want to know what you guys have to say. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me what you thought about anything that we're talking about here. Very quickly, a reminder to help support us when it comes to the different means that you can, now more than ever, actually. Whether that becomes something like a Patreon donation, yeah, it's going to mean a lot for even a couple bucks a month when it comes to that. To get the same thing on the YouTube channel membership, Redbubble and TeePublic gives you access to all the merchandise options. But yeah, I'm going to try to be pushing that a little bit more going forward. And I would definitely really appreciate the support. It's money's going to be tight. So if you got the spare change, consider donating and helping us keep afloat so we continue to keep doing these for you guys and that we don't have to stop doing that. But all your support's greatly appreciated. That little thanks button and the non-monetary things too, the like button, the subscribe button, so on and so forth. Let's just start diving into this. I wanted to talk about something that we didn't get to talk about on the Royal Rumble itself. Ricky Starks was backstage, and there isn't really much to this story. He was backstage as like Cody's +1 kind of, but I do think it's pretty interesting because they were allowing him to be backstage despite him being an AEW contracted superstar, well, they don't call them superstars, but it's good to see that there is more camaraderie between companies and that maybe this necessarily wouldn't have been the case under the Vince McMahon regime as much. Maybe he would have been opposed to the idea of somebody doing that. Maybe it wouldn't have been an issue whatsoever. I don't know. I think that maybe QT Marshall might have been backstage for something while Vince was still in control. I don't remember for sure, so don't quote me on that. But the idea being, if he is as tight with Cody Rhodes as he is, there's a chance that, when Ricky Starks' deal comes up in AEW, he might be interested in joining the WWE side of things. WWE might be interested in picking him up. So this might be a story that down the line, few years, whenever that contract does end, we might be talking about it again as him deciding to switch over to WWE. And, if that's the case, there might be more. Then maybe that's what happens with MJF, or maybe that's what happens with people from the Nightmare Factory, or, there's a lot of people that came into AEW as part of the Cody Rhodes side of it. And I'm sure they've got a lot of good things when it comes to the Elite and Tony Khan in general and all, but maybe some of them are Cody Rhodes loyalists in the end. I don't know. It's just an interesting thing to talk about. Now, as far as contract stuff goes, there are some other stories, but there's also another thing with the Royal Rumble that we didn't know at the time, and that is that Kenny Dykstra was injured during that brawl between the Judgment Day and Beth Phoenix and Edge and everything. He suffered an injury just from, one of those things that happen. You trip and fall, you stumble, that kind of deal. So that sucks. And obviously, hopefully he gets healed up super soon, and that this doesn't affect his means to be able to produce backstage for WWE and all. It's kind of strange, though, that ends up happening. You can get all these people doing these dangerous moves, and thankfully none of them get hurt, and then a producer gets hurt because of a backstage, or not even a backstage brawl. It's, out on the stage. But That's something that goes along with the idea that Brock Lesnar potentially has some heat over what he did with throwing the commentary table into the ring and tossing the referee around. Eddie Rango was supposed to apparently be the one that raised Cody Rhodes' hand, and then he was unable to because he actually might have gotten injured doing this whole thing. So I don't expect Brock Lesnar to have any kind of repercussions that goes out of this because he is Brock Lesnar after all. So they're not going to let him go from his contract. They're not going to take away his WrestleMania match, but it does seem like he potentially has some heat from that. And, if you're being a little reckless or something, then I can totally understand why that would be the case. Let's talk about the unfortunate passing of Lanny Poffo, the genius, as many know him. Randy Savage's brother passed away at age 68. Of course, downer news like that is never good to report, so there isn't too much to really talk about when it comes to that. I mean, you just don't want to hear it, and when you hear it, it's sad. So I can't say that I've got a laundry list of my favorite Lanny Poffo moments of, here's the 10 favorite people that I've ever seen him feud with as the genius or anything, but the character was fun. We've had plenty of jokes over the years, just poking fun at the idea of the genius and Lanny Poffo in general. But it's always sad when you see somebody passing from the world of pro wrestling, and our condolences go out to his family, his friends, his fans. And like I always say, drop your thoughts in the comments, but also drop your memories. If you have anything in mind of your favorite Lanny Poffo moment or a particular promo that he cut that you really thought was really funny or really fun or whatever it might be. But that's one of those stories that unfortunately goes on the hot tags this week. As far as contract stuff goes, to backtrack to that idea, we've got Dirty Dango, used to be known as Fandango, used to be known as Johnny Curtis, has signed with Impact Wrestling. He had been a part of NWA, leaving WWE when he got released in one of the mass sets of releases that happened over the past 2 years, or 3 years at this point. And the general idea that I had was that he would stay in NWA for a little bit and potentially, I didn't expect him to go to AEW, but I actually kind of expected him to come back to WWE. I thought that in this rehiring spree that we would get Tyler Breeze back, and I thought that we might get Fandango back just to pair them off. But Impact seems like it could be a good spot for him. So congrats to Dirty Dango for getting his spot on that roster. And I'd be interested to check out to see what he's got going on there. I always thought that he was a little bit underrated. So good news for that. Carmella has returned. We talked about that on the Monday Night Raw episode. And we can kind of, in general, talk about some projections when it comes to the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view and all that, because we got the confirmation that there are 2 Elimination Chamber matches. And currently, almost all of the spots are filled, but not every single one of them is. This is how they did it, to, just kind of talk about the Monday Night Raw side of things. They are going to have a United States Championship Elimination Chamber match. That currently is featuring Austin Theory, obviously, because he's the defending champion. Bronson Reed, who had defeated Dolph Ziggler to get a spot in here. There is Johnny Gargano, who defeated Baron Corbin, and Seth Rollins, who defeated Chad Gable. That makes up 4 out of the 6. And currently listed, this is what they're advertising, the final 2 are either going to be Damian Priest or Angelo Dawkins, and either Elias or Montez Ford. I think it's pretty interesting that the Street Profits are in these singles matches, and we don't have Bobby Lashley a part of it. Because you would assume Bobby Lashley is feuding with Austin Theory still. I mean, he attacked him this week, but they don't want to put him in the match, or maybe there's a twist to it. I think that there is a chance that maybe Elias, maybe one of the Street Profits gets attacked backstage in some fashion. They get ruled out of competing and Bobby Lashley gets put in their place. And then he ends up beating somebody. He gets in there and then maybe Lesnar screws him over at Elimination Chamber again. I don't know. I would think that would make more sense if it's Angelo Dawkins and then he beats Damian Priest because he has a heel at least. But then I was kind of thinking that Damian Priest had more of a chance. So I don't know. Maybe it is just Elias and Damian Priest, or maybe it is the two members of the Street Profits. I don't know. But that will be an interesting story to track going forward. We also have an Elimination Chamber for the women's division. That one is going to be to determine who fights Bianca Belair at WrestleMania. So it's a number one contenders title shot situation. The 4 who have qualified so far are not people who had been in qualifying matches. Instead, they were the 4 out of the final 5 outside of Rhea Ripley for the Royal Rumble. And I think that makes perfect sense. I think it's an easy way to just say, look, Asuka, Liv Morgan, Nikki Cross, and Raquel Rodriguez are in it. That also justifies incorporating Raw and SmackDown women for this, despite it being for the Raw Women's Championship, because let's face it, the brand split doesn't really mean as much as it used to anymore. And they are kind of doing the thing where people jump ship back and forth on the road to WrestleMania. That's a regular thing. So they are being a little bit sneaky about this. And currently right now, I mean, it's 6:57 when I'm recording this. So, within an hour and some change, we're probably going to get another answer to this, but they are currently announcing, or they're currently advertising, that one of those 2 remaining spots will be filled by the winner of a Fatal 4-Way. This is Candice LeRae, Carmella, who had returned. Great to see Carmella back. Michin or Piper Niven. And the other one they haven't said. So that is the most curious thing for me, because I am intrigued why they didn't bother to say, and we're going to have this other Fatal 4-Way, or we're going to have this other qualifying match. There are a couple different ways I think that they might be able to do this, and all are justified in my mind. One is that they are going to retroactively say that Becky Lynch versus Bayley in the steel cage match is going to be a qualifier, and they just wanted to kind of save that as like a momentary reveal. Or we might get some other announcement of a qualifying match on SmackDown, like the folks like Lacey Evans, or maybe Shotzi or Aaliyah, because she's supposed to be cleared to compete and everything. Actually, funny enough, now that I'm saying this, I am loading the page and there is more information on that. And it doesn't include everybody that I thought it was going to. The qualifying match is going to be Shayna Baszler versus Shotzi versus Zelina Vega versus Natalya. So no Lacey Evans in there. And that's pretty interesting. I thought that Lacey would not only be at least in the running to be a qualifier, but I thought that she was actually probably my favorite to be in the match. Now that that's the case, I am assuming Shayna Baszler wins this. And maybe on the other side of things, maybe it's Piper Niven. It could be Carmella. I mean, there's any of these options make perfect sense to me. If they want to go with Shotzi, they can go with Shotzi. If they want to go with Natty, okay. Zelina, yeah. They're all people who have had success in different means. But I'm going to say Shayna Baszler and Piper Niven. I'm leaning a little bit more towards Carmella as soon as I said that. I thought that there was a good chance that Ronda Rousey could have potentially been in there. That was where I was originally going here, was that maybe they're saving that because they want to announce a spontaneous Ronda Rousey match. And that still could be the case. Maybe in an hour they end up having something like what I said with the Elias and Street Profits situation. Maybe Shotzi gets attacked and Ronda Rousey fills her space. Maybe Shayna Baszler ends up giving up her qualifying thing to Ronda. I don't know, but that's interesting that we're going to get to determine another match for WrestleMania coming up on Monday Night Raw. So they're making that pretty important for that thing. Let's talk about the Gunther Intercontinental Championship reign. This is just a little note that I thought was pretty interesting. He is pretty close to breaking the top 3 longest Intercontinental Championship reigns. he'll do that if he lasts until WrestleMania. And for anybody who's wondering about the Honky Tonk Man's record, if Gunther lasts until September 8th, then he will become the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion in WWE history. I think there's a possibility that Gunther might last until September. He doesn't need to lose this belt at Mania. I still think we're going to get a triple threat, that it's going to be Gunther against Sheamus and Drew McIntyre. And in that scenario, Gunther can definitely retain. He could lose the belt to Sheamus. He could lose the belt to Drew McIntyre. Maybe there's another match in mind. I don't know. But yeah, I think it's a possibility that he lasts all the way through September. So that was just a little thing. Thought was interesting. Also want to talk about AEW and the idea that they are doing more live events. And this series is going to be called AEW House Rules. You know, they had the House Always Wins idea, and I've said this before, time and time again. I think it's interesting that they are very, very heavily into the gambling side of things, because they really like to have, you know, Double or Nothing and the Deadly Draw tournament and these things that are based around Casino Battle Royale. It's casinos in the name. They really, really like the gambling themes. So House Rules, it's not my favorite name out of everything, but it's gimmicky, and I completely see why they named it that. Can't say that I wouldn't have. You know, WWE can just have live events. That's all they call them. They don't call them house shows. But we all know that that's the house show circuit/market. That's what you get when you get market. The house show loop is what you refer to it. So All Elite Wrestling is going to go with House Rules. Not the best, not the worst name. And if anybody goes to one of those shows, let us know how it was. Is it something worth checking out? Is it something that is a little on the bland side? Is it, you know, too low rent? Or is it just as good as going to a Dynamite? Still haven't gone to an AEW show yet. Still interested in doing that. So maybe this will be a little bit easier. I don't know. Another thing with AEW is that Samoa Joe won back the AEW TNT Championship from Darby Allin, and Wardlow returned. So I, of course, went through my predictions. I undid what I had originally down before, which was that I thought that Eddie Kingston would be the next champion. Now I'm firmly back in the camp. I think they're going to give the belt back to Wardlow, and that they probably took it off of Wardlow more so because he was going to take some time off for whatever it was. I don't know what, an injury or something, but he's back. He's got a shorter haircut. He'll probably beat Samoa Joe. I think that's going to probably happen at Revolution. We'll talk about that down the line when that comes around for that pay-per-view. But rounding things out a little bit, just talking about some other concepts from episodes of Raw, the NXT episode, and so on. Rick Boogs is back. Good to see him back in action. He definitely needs to team up or feud, or both. You do one and then the other, with Elias. I definitely want Boogs and Elias together. And I wrote up something about this on EWN about different teams that I want to see them pair up. Like, maybe Cora Jade can get a new tag team partner, and maybe they can do something with reteaming up the Hurt Business in a different way, and so on and so forth. But Rick Boogs and Elias makes a lot of sense. I really liked a lot of the names that I saw on subreddit post. It was Two-Man Power Riff was one of my favorite ones. Thought that was really catchy. Power Chord was another one. So browse that article, check that out if you're interested. We got the qualifying matches. We already talked about that. And Cody Rhodes beat Finn Balor. Going to keep up some of those appearances going forward. Other news on other days for different things. We mostly talked about everything when it came to Dynamite, or not Dynamite, to NXT. And Cher beat the Creed brothers, though. That was something. And Tyler Bate started a whole thing with Axiom where he's talking about him being a kid and stuff. Kind of funny stuff. I liked this episode of NXT. A lot of it felt a little bit like it's just sort of happening. You know, Stevie Turner beats Danny Palmer. Danny Palmer hasn't established herself. Stevie Turner's just starting to, and it's a match the way that it is. But I thought that it's interesting that maybe Mr. Stone isn't going to be with Von Wagner anymore. Maybe that's a sign that he comes up to the main roster. Maybe that's a sign that they split. Maybe it's not the case. I don't know. Maybe Von Wagner is going to be gunning for a championship soon or something. On the AEW front, that episode of Dynamite had some interesting action. It's got the most recent of Brian Danielson's challenges, where this time around, he had just gotten through with Brian Cage. This time he had to get through Timothy Thatcher. Brian Cage, meanwhile, fought Konosuke Takeshita. The Acclaimed had a whole setup with the guns. That's, a situation that's going to play out next week, I think is what it is, where they're going to have a title match. And I'm a little bit suspicious that Billy Gunn's going to turn on them. I think that he might cost the Acclaim the titles. Not 100% sold, but it's a possibility. Something that's just giving me that vibe. Red Velvet lost to Jade Cargill. Cargill is now at 50-0. That's pretty cool. Jon Moxley and Hangman Adam Page had a hell of a match to start things off. That feud does not seem like that is over yet, so we might see something like a death match or something. Maybe at a Revolution. As far as the last little bits of hot tags go from my list, there were two things about this latest interview with Nick Khan that was pretty interesting. One being Comcast is not necessarily in the running anymore to buy WWE. I don't know how to read into that, because you would think that they wouldn't just rule things out, unless maybe, this is my gut reaction, I keep thinking that Comcast is the main source here. And I don't know if I have any kind of false crystal ball going on, or if it's just a hunch, or if it's so logical to me that I can't see past it to all the other possible avenues. But I just keep feeling like it's Comcast more than anything. And my initial reaction to this was, what the hell do you mean that they're not in the running anymore? How did the negotiations break down so much that you can just rule them out? Now I'm starting to think otherwise. Now I think they are playing hardball, and that this is them basically saying, well, we're not going to entertain that idea, so we're just going to keep looking elsewhere, in the hopes that Comcast bumps up their price. And the more that they start talking about, we're going to probably sell it really quickly to somebody else, and Apple's interested, or Endeavor's interested, or they haven't really said too much on that. But if they start tossing out names, if they start saying that people are going to pick up the slack where Comcast was not actually going to be meeting the match, the numbers that they were thinking that they wanted to get, then maybe that's so that they can hear another response from Comcast. Maybe, look, arbitrary number. What if they want to sell for $10 billion? $10 billion seems absolutely absurd. We're just going to go with a nice round number like that. So WWE says, look, you can own the company under these terms. This with Triple H in charge, this with whatever, blah, 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 blah. And we're looking for $10 billion for a price tag. And Comcast could be like, well, we're looking at more like 2. And you go, we're going to meet at maybe 7. And then Comcast goes, no, the most we could do is maybe 3. That could be where WWE just says, all right, well, then I guess you're not in the running anymore. And then they hope that they can go, oh, okay, well, maybe we could do 6. I don't know. The other thing I think is interesting is that they were talking about how they are reconsidering their concepts of dealing with sponsorships, that they do want to do another match like the Mountain Dew Pitch Black match at WrestleMania. They have something in mind. It's going to revolve around a match, but they didn't say the sponsor. They didn't say who's involved. Nothing yet. I mean, we got time. We got weeks. So I guess we're going to get another either Bray Wyatt angle, or maybe there's going to be something that we don't see coming whatsoever. Maybe it's going to be like, hey, the Seth Rollins and Logan Paul match is going to be, was it Bang Energy, I think is his thing. Like, maybe that's going to be a thing. And they're going to incorporate something gimmicky around that. But they also are going to potentially monetize the ring assets. They might have what we've seen in boxing and MMA, and AEW has even done it before, where they might take the mat and put, a KFC ad on there, or they might put something in the center that says, sponsored by DraftKings or something. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but that's just one of those aesthetics that you just get over and you barely pay attention to it when it actually happens. A Cracker Barrel logo in the corners of the ring isn't going to be something that is going to I'm not going to watch the show anymore or something. No, it's just, I like the clean mat. And at the same time, I'm surprised it took them this long, because they are probably sitting on a lot of money when it comes to that. So I probably would have been actually pitching it if I were on, and I'm not an economy specialist by any means, but if somebody were to say to me, what are your ideas of how we can make some more money? I probably would have pitched it. I actually wrote up another thing about how I'd like to see more sponsorship type matches. Because why not? Why not have these tie-ins? Like, Zelina Vega was just dressed up as a Street Fighter character. Why aren't we having Xia Li got eliminated by Zelina Vega? Why isn't Xia Li dressed up as Chun-Li fighting Zelina Vega for a match that they can sponsor? You don't have to do it on pay-per-view. You can do it on an episode of SmackDown, but maybe that gets them quite a bit of money. Maybe that's the thing that saves somebody from their jobs or something. And it's not like it's not silly in a way that pro wrestling isn't silly. So you got a lot of room that you can play around with there. But we might be seeing that going forward. It's interesting that they are talking about things that don't necessarily involve what somebody buying the company would put down for them. Because you got to assume if somebody buys the company that they're going to have their own ideas. They're going to say, how about you do this going forward? But how about we change this up? But they're doing that already. So maybe there is something to this idea of just going private. And maybe 2 months from now, we're just getting an announcement. Vince McMahon decided to buy WWE, and Alpha Entertainment owns WWE. Wouldn't that be strange? Well, in any fashion, those are the hot tags of the week. As I said, apologies for not having Robin Callum on, and apologies for not having the most enthusiastic approach to covering pro wrestling right now. And I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank you for any and all of your support, especially if it ends up being on the monetary side. We will be trying to potentially do more on that front. I don't really know in what capacity yet, how, when, where, etc. But stay tuned. And also stay tuned to the Vengeance Day coverage that is coming tomorrow night. That pay-per-view starts, I believe, at 7 o'clock at night for the kickoff. It might be 7:30. One way or another, NXT Vengeance Day is happening. There's going to be a post-show, and I hope you tune in. So thank you again for listening to this. Make sure that you follow me all over the place, including fanboysanonymous.com. But if you go to anthonymango.com, you will see links to my social medias and things like my Letterboxd, and check out what I got up on EWN. And adios for now. Thanks for listening, everybody. This has been another Smark Out moment, and I'm being counted out.